Lonely Monk Productions. I don't know if y'all have heard Church and State by Brandy Carlisle yet, but yo!
That's my Jawn!
Hey, yo, displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. You're tasting things that don't need to be measured. You ain't being
What's good, friends and family, neighbors near and far? Welcome to an all-new episode of the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast. The podcast, website, brand, movement, way of life dedicated to the embrace and championing of your passions. I'm your host, Nate Runkle, a.k.a. John Fogarty, a.k.a. Nate 3.0. Back at it again with yet another episode of the podcast. As always, I hope this podcast finds you all in good health and in good spirits. On today's episode, I chat with author Dalla Riva about his new book, Uncharted Territory, What Numbers Tell Us About the Biggest Hit Songs and Ourselves. Chris listened to every number one single on the Billboard Hot 100 charts dating back to its inception, and he wrote all about it. I have been looking forward to chatting with him because, you know, as well as being an enormous fan of music, I also like to fancy myself quite a bit of a data nerd. And we have a chat that scratches both of those itches, and that is coming up in a minute here. But first, hey, look at me. 2 episodes in 2 weeks. That's refreshing, no? You know, like I said last episode, we're going to try to keep some regularity through the end of the year/season, even though I disrupted that to be able to get this episode out the week that Chris's book is being released. And so, don't hold me to this, but I think, starting with this episode, we will resume the every other week release schedule. Again, betting the under on me releasing on time would probably be the safest bet, but my intent is there. Of course, the best way to stay on top of that and to remain in the know of all the goings-on is twofold. One, hop on the mailing list. You can visit www.yothat'smyjawn.com and you can sign up for the mailing list. Do that. Or 2, you can follow us on the socials at YoThat'sMyJawn. If you do that 1-2 punch, you will easily beast any Yo That's My Jawn trivia contest because you will have received all of the knowledge available. You know, none of the secret embarrassing stuff that I that I used to write fan fiction for the 21 Jump Street spinoff show Booker, starring Richard Grieco. Those facts, those will remain with me. Though I kind of guess I just shared it with you, didn't I? Oh no. We do have a lot of fun scheduled on the horizon, though. Some of the big fun this time of the year, of course, is the 'Twas the Jawn Before Christmas ukulele sing-along that I do every year. I've already started rehearsing some tracks, which is more than I can say about any other year, so that's pretty cool. I hope to have some more surprises this year also. You know, we've been doing guest appearances and pop-ins and stuff like that, and hopefully that will continue this year. But right now, the tentative date for 'Twas the Jawn Before Christmas is December 22nd. So mark your calendars. And of course, if you are listening to this on the day of release, Monday, November the 10th, well, I'm on the radio tonight. Tune in to whynotradio.net from 5 to 8 p.m. and hang with me as I spin some dope indie rock like I do every other week. That is, if you aren't already sick of hearing my voice. Actually, let me help you with that one. I'll just shut the fuck up and we can get on with the show. My guest today is a songwriter and author, as well as a senior product manager at AudioMac, where he focuses on data analytics and personalization. He writes the popular newsletter Can't Get Much Higher and has had his work featured by The Economist, Business Insider, The Wall Street Journal, the London School of Economics, and NPR, amongst many others. This Thursday, he is releasing his book, Uncharted Territory, What Numbers Tell Us About the Biggest Hit Songs and Ourselves, an exploration of the Billboard Hot 100 and popular music history through the use of data analytics, charts, and numbers. Folks, it is my honor to welcome to the show, Dalla Riva. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined today by the great Dalla Riva. Chris, thank you for joining me on Yo, That's My Jawn.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So ever since your book was announced, which is Uncharted Territory, which is all about the Billboard charts and data, and which music and data are like 2 of my great loves, I knew that at some point we were going to have to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, when we connected, I was excited to find a time to chat because I feel like a lot of people, most people are into music, some people are into data, but there's a smaller circle of people that are interested in both of them. So when I find someone that is at that intersection, I'm always down to chat.
I love it. I always like to start these things off in the Wayback Machine. Tell me a little bit about yourself growing up. What was music like in your childhood?
Yeah, I'm from New Jersey. I currently live in Hoboken, New Jersey, but I grew up in the suburbs, probably about 30 minutes from here, but still not too far from New York City. And I was always into music growing up. No one in my family is musical. My parents don't play instruments. No one was a singer, but music was always around the house. My parents were into music. And when I was in either 5th or 6th grade, I asked to start taking guitar lessons, and that started just a love affair, a deeper love affair with music. From not long after I started that, I was interested in playing in bands and writing songs and burning them to CDs and making people at my high school suffer through them. And then when I went to college in Boston, and I kept playing in bands. And then by the time I ended up moving back to New Jersey, I'd played most of like the small clubs in and around the Boston area. And I still play now. I have not been as involved with fronting my own band, but I have been playing bass with my cousin's band, which is more of like a punk band, which is a little bit different from what I typically do. But yeah, I've always been infatuated with the creative process. I've always loved singing and playing the guitar and just creating things and putting them out there and seeing what happens.
Yeah. When you were first starting to play guitar, can you remember, this is one of my favorite questions to ask, what the first song you could play from start to finish was?
I believe that the first song I learned was Time of Your Life by Green Day.
Okay, yeah.
Though I assume the first time I played it, it was just strumming along to the chords and not actually doing the picking pattern. But I'm pretty sure that was the first one that I could play end to end.
That's a good one. The first one I could play start to finish was Unsung by Helmet, and it was just because it was in drop D, and I don't know that I was playing it right, but it's just very repetitive, and I was like, I got this. Like,
there are many songs that I would do that with, where I was like, I thought I was playing it right, and then you see a video or you actually look at a tab, and you're like, actually, I'm not doing this right. I had a teacher growing up I'm still really good friends with him. He was an incredible teacher, and we were playing this Led Zeppelin song, and then months later or years later, I saw somebody else playing it, and I was like, oh, they're playing a little bit differently. And I reached out to my teacher. He was like, oh, yeah, I changed it a little just so it fit what I was trying to teach you more. I was like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, it's the best. The opposite of that, though, I can't tell you how many times I'm going through Ultimate Guitar, like playing tabs and stuff, and I'm like, this is just wrong on its face, and I don't even know how you, like, not only play it wrong, but then, like, wrote it down wrong, and then uploaded it for other people to play wrong.
Yeah. Ultimate Guitar, when it's right, it's right. When it's wrong, it's super wrong. I definitely think, especially if you're looking up chords on there, people are pretty good with just major and minor chords, but if there start to be like minor sevenths and major sevenths, you have to use your ear to make sure that it's actually notated on the page.
Yeah. There's a lot of, this is close enough and I know what that means, Exactly. Yeah, I'm very guilty of simplifying songs for myself. I play out like solo acoustic mostly anymore, occasionally with a buddy of mine on drums, but yeah, I'm like, you get the point of what I'm playing here.
I mean, it totally depends on the song. Sometimes you really don't need to capture exactly what was on the recording, and songs are open to interpretation. So sometimes it makes more sense, especially when you're just playing it on an acoustic guitar and like the studio recording has strings and horns, you know.
Yeah, for sure. So you went to school in Boston. What did you go to school for?
I studied math and economics, which I guess makes sense for my dual interest in data, numbers. Some people would have found that strange. It's like growing up, I was into music. I liked English class, I liked reading and writing, but I also enjoyed math. So, it's a nice combination of interests what I've been able to do post-grad. But even I didn't study music in school, but I still played in bands, was always collaborating with music projects with people throughout college.
Yeah. Music to me is math. Like music is math. Like it's just so like it doesn't seem like a stretch for me to kind of be interested in both of those because they are kind of both solving for equations, and there are, you know, equations that don't work in music, you know, like
Totally. I think I didn't really realize this about math until I went to college is, you know, if you're just solving algebraic equations or whatever, it's sort of like, all right, here's the process, just do it 1,000 times and you'll understand it. But when you're trying to solve a math problem that's a little bit more abstract, there is a creative component that I agree, it sort of scratches the same part of your brain as when you're trying to figure out how to put a song together or you're trying to figure out how to arrange something. It's different, but it's highly related.
Yeah. Backing up just a little bit, when you were talking about writing and recording to CDR and whatnot and forcing your friends, do you still have any of that? Does any of that music still exist?
Oh, yeah. It still exists, certainly on my computer. There is one project, I actually regret that I did this. It was like the first project I should go back. And the stuff I would give out to people is just like recorded in my bedroom. And then I went to a studio once when I was like a freshman or sophomore in college, and I recorded a couple songs. I took that off the internet, which I regret because even though I don't really like it that much now, I mean, I think it still shows your creative progression. But the CDs I would hand out, all the music still exists in all of its glory, good and bad.
Yeah. I love revisiting stuff like that, especially because like there are things I did in early songwriting that I would never do now. And I don't know why I did them then, because like they don't kind of music theory, they don't make sense, but they work. And I just wish I kind of had that like lack of knowledge to just explore and go, no, this is the chord I'm going to, you know?
Totally. I feel the same way all the time now. I feel like sometimes I'm a little bit too cerebral about the way I'm writing, or I'm thinking about it a little too much. When I had less knowledge, I would sort of just let it pour out of me. And there are certain things I certainly do much better now just from years and years of practice. But sometimes you want to be able to tap into that abandon or that, just the idea of not thinking as much about what you were doing when you were still just trying to figure out what's going on the fretboard.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you know, a lot of times for me, it's like, I try to recapture that, like, oh, you know what? I know that this is supposed to be a minor, but let's just try something different, you know, like, and it just doesn't work the same. Like, I think it's because, like you said, I'm so in my own head, like, I know that this isn't right, that I can't make it right, you know?
Yeah. My guitar teacher growing up was really into alternate tunings. And he would often say that sometimes when you put the guitar in a different tuning, it makes it feel like you're picking it up for the first time again. And I definitely get where he's coming from there. I mean, still, you have enough knowledge where you could still quickly sort of piece together what's going on in the alternate tuning, but it does make it feel like a new instrument, which is sort of cool.
Yeah, for sure. When did writing start for you? Like,
like I said, growing up, I enjoyed writing, but I never did a ton of writing publicly in the same way that, you know, if there was ever a school talent show, I would be up there playing songs. It wasn't until I started this project where I was like, oh, I sort of am on the way to writing a book. I want to try to get this thing published, but I had no reputation as someone that wrote stuff, so I had to put my writing out there more. So really only probably in like the last 6 or 7 years have I been writing publicly. But I've always enjoyed writing, but I was always preoccupied with music, where I was not writing, you know, essays or newsletters back then. There's only so many hours in the day, as you know.
Yeah, definitely true. Because I think the first thing I remember reading, or, you know, the first time you kind of came, you know, in front of my computer screen or phone or whatever it was at that point, was the article about key changes, about where is the key change gone? Because it's something like that I you know, like that was like the first time where I was like, oh my God, somebody else is thinking about the weird things that I'm thinking about. And then, like I said, when I heard about the project of the book, and kind of going back and tracking, for those who don't know, Uncharted Territory is literally, you listen to how many decades of number ones for Billboard number ones?
Yeah, every number one since the Hot 100, which is the pop chart, which was founded, which was August 1958. So it's about 1,200 number one hits over 6.5 decades.
What did you cap it off at?
Well, I would have just kept going, but book publishing, I feel like, is one of the few things in this world that still moves sort of slow. So I ended up stopping like just at the beginning of 2025. I think the last song I did the last I listened to was Die With a Smile by Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars, I think. I don't know if I might have gone one or two past that, but that was pretty much the cutoff.
If that's the last one, that's like a good closer. I like that.
That is, I did not think of that, but yeah, it's a good song too.
Yeah,
so
not bad. So when did you start? When did you start kind of the project?
So I started it, I think, in like 2018 or 2019. 2018 or 2019. I just concocted this idea that I was going to listen to every number one hit. Because as we've talked about, I played music. I mean, I've always been interested in the history of music. I thought I'll listen to one of these songs a day, play along on my guitar. Maybe I'll improve as a songwriter. I think my songs got better, but that ended up being beside the point, where I started to notice some trends as I went along. I wrote something up and I sent it to this professor that I'd had in college, and he was like, "Oh, this is pretty good. You should keep at this." So over the years, I would just listen to one song a day, and I started tracking information about them because at the time I still work with data, but even out of college I was working a spreadsheet job, so I was very I was used to tracking things in spreadsheets, so I would just notice patterns from things I was tracking, write about them, and eventually I had the makings of a book. But like I said, I'd never published anything, and it's very hard to get a book published if you've never published a word of writing anywhere. So I eventually pitched this idea on how there are fewer key changes, which is something that was in the data set. And this cool website called Tedium agreed to publish it. And it just went mega viral. I mean, still to this day, I've occasionally done other things that have had some virality online, but this was a whole different level. And still, when I talk to people, I'm not surprised that's what you brought up. When I talk to people today, and this is, 4 or 5 years later, it's still the piece most people are familiar with, because it just went very, very viral to the point where I would go on Twitter and I would see musicians that I was fans of like arguing about it, because it sort of sparked a debate about like what caused this, and is this good or is this bad? And still occasionally people reach out to me about it. Someone just sent me today, there's a popular YouTube channel, I don't know if you've ever come across, it's called, I might screw up how to say this, I think it's called Pianote or something.
Okay.
Where they'll like get a famous piano player in and they'll play them songs and they'll improvise over them, or they'll play them something they haven't heard before.
Oh, okay, I think I've seen that, yeah.
And there was one that came out today where the guy was like, yeah, I don't know if you ever read that article about how there are no key changes in popular music, and then they popped the graphic from the piece on the screen, and I was like, oh, this thing is going to follow me till I die, which isn't a bad thing, but so that then I sort of parlayed that into a lot of other writing opportunities, and it's just been slow, steady progress since then.
One of the things that I really appreciate about your writing, and I'm going to assume the rest of the book is kind of similar, is that like you let the data kind of talk. Like you don't, like we kind of live in a kind of take economy. And I feel like you do a very good job. And that isn't to say that you don't share your own opinions, but like it doesn't come across as like, this is why, you know what I mean? Like one of my problems with the internet at writ large is just this kind of like, no one can just say, I believe something. It's always just like, no, this is how it is because I say it is, like this kind of
Totally.
declarative statements instead of just kind of like the conversation, like, hey, you know what I think, and then like, maybe I'm wrong, but that's just what I think,
I think one of the things you learn working with data is that you become even more skeptical of data because it's very easy to misuse and mislead people. So I always try to keep an open mind when I'm doing this stuff to be like, well, maybe this is, I mean, if someone shows me something that will convince me otherwise, I'll try to change my mind. So yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, I try to come across that way. And also, I'm always like, we're talking about music at the end of the day, even if it's wrapped up in something serious. It's like we have to talk about it somewhat lightly.
Yeah.
I don't need to scream at people online about the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. It just sounds miserable.
Yeah. Well, like this, it's kind of like people are probably tired of hearing this, but it's kind of the genesis of this project was this, That's My Jawn show was just like, I wanted to talk to people about things they like. Because like I'll admit it, I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm cynical as hell, and like I have to go out of my nature to just be a positive guy, but like I wanted to kind of explore that. I kind of wanted to just talk about things I like I like data and I like music, and so like this is I'm super excited to like kind of dig into this. How many like what kind of in your data collection, like what all kind of data points were you hitting?
Anything that sort of interested me. The way it started was I had a friend who listened to all these songs with me. I was probably 10 songs in, and I was telling him I was going to try to do this. He was like, "Oh, I'll do it." So with you. So every day I would send him the song. We'd both listen to it. We'd chat about it, and then we'd rate it from 1 to 10. And I would just track our ratings in a spreadsheet. And then that spreadsheet slowly blew up, and I actually have it published online. Anyone can access it. There's the most basic things about the songs: who wrote them, who produced them, what label put them out. There is some ways that we try to quantify, like what it sounds like. I would get these, Spotify publishes this information, like how danceable is a song, how happy is the song. They make these stats available. Some things about the cultural context of the song. Did it become popular because it was in a movie? Was it written for a movie or a television show? And then a lot of stuff about the structure of the songs, what sort of goes on in the song, what instruments are involved, and some things about demographics. So was the artist white? What about the producer? What about the songwriter? I try to track those trends too. Same with gender. So again, anything that I was remotely interested in, I'd be like, all right, I'll add that as a data point and plot it on a chart and see if it looks interesting, and then I'll write about it if it is. But it's sort of all over the place.
Did the data tell you anything surprising that you didn't know or that you didn't expect it to?
Yeah, I think that was part of the project, that there were many things I learned that I felt like reinforced the feelings that I'd already had about popular music, and there were other things that I learned that overturned the feelings that I had about popular music or changed them. I think a good example is, and this shows like why the context around data is important, is I would again track who wrote each song, and you start noticing as time goes on that there are a lot more songwriters credited on number one hits. For decades, it was really, on average, it was 2 people, which makes sense when you think of all the famous songwriting duos. And then you get to the 2000s, it's like, oh, there's 6 songwriters on this, so there's 8 songwriters on this. And the chart just sort of goes along for decades sitting at 2, and then it shoots up to like 6 or 7. I was not completely aware of this before going in to this project, but at the same time, again, the context matters, where decades before, you were really only getting a songwriting credit if you wrote lyrics, if you wrote the melody, you wrote the chord progression. Now we dole out songwriting credits for things that would traditionally be considered production. Like, oh, you made the beat on this song, you're getting a songwriting credit. Or you sampled this earlier recording, we have to credit all the people who were involved in that earlier recording. To the point where now when I think about it, like, if the Beatles were around today, George Martin would probably have gotten songwriting credits on some of the songs, or even, people get songwriting credits for beats on songs. Would Ringo have gotten a songwriting credit on I Feel Fine because the drum beat's so electric? I don't know, but I think this was a good example of something a trend I was not completely aware of, and you could point to that and be like, wow, songwriters are so much less talented today. It requires so many more people to write a hit, but then you also have to take into account the context around the data, so you're not using it to deceive people in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if this popped up, if it's in your book or what, but it's something that has confused me for a very good portion of my life. What happened to the saxophone? We used to love the saxophone. Now we barely love the saxophone.
We did. It could have been you. Someone asked me this a couple months ago, and I do track in this data set, like, does song have saxophone? And the sax is around through the 60s and the 70s. It sort of launches into the stratosphere in the 80s, and then it falls off. You very rarely hear a saxophone in a pop song these days. I think there's a Katy Perry song that has an alto sax, and I would guess Shake It Off by Taylor Swift has a sax somewhere in that horn line. I don't know exactly what happened. I think horns in general are less popular in popular songs. I don't think they're as popular in the hip-hop scene, and hip-hop's been the dominant cultural force for, 30 years. At the same time, when I initially published this idea, when I published a chart about this, someone suggested that by the end of the 80s, Bruce Springsteen was so popular that everyone was done with the saxophone, which I don't know if that's true, but I thought it was a funny theory.
I like it. I can live with that. Being an East Coast guy, like I'll take that. Like, he did it all. What else can we do with it?
Exactly.
It felt like it was so prevalent early in my life, and then like it's just nowhere now. It's so weird. Like, is there anything else like that kind of that was like popular for a very long time and then just kind of disappeared from the zeitgeist?
Yeah. There's. The key change is the big one. Same thing with string arrangements. You don't hear as many orchestral arrangements in popular songs. I just wrote something short about that today. Same thing with horns and string arrangements. And, you will sort of hear string sounds in songs now, but for the most part, there are synth patches. People are playing those on keyboards. Those are the two that come to the top of my mind in terms of instrumental arrangements. Oh, another one, introductions. Song introductions are much shorter, to the point where they basically don't exist, where if you go back to the 60s or even earlier, the 40s and the 50s, there would be like a dedicated lyrical section that was an intro. When you think of like old Broadway show tunes, sort of like a half-sung intro and then it goes into the song. That does not exist. That barely existed in the 60s, and then maybe you would get instrumental intros in the 70s, but now it's just like, let's get to the point, which is a little disappointing sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like, a lot has been discussed about kind of the effect of TikTok and streaming on things, but like, it makes sense. Like you got to grab them so quick now because the attention's gone and there's something else right there ready to be heard,
Totally. And the sad thing is I think of so many great songs that have these long winding introductions that would it play well on TikTok? No, probably not. Would it play well on streaming? I don't know. Artists, one of the main threads of the book is that artists often are responding to incentives, whether they're technological or economic, and I think that's another example of that.
How about, so here, I don't know if you were involved in this or not, but I know Billboard had a conversation maybe a year ago about bands and groups and the pop charts. Like,
yeah.
I understand it because like everybody's at home in their, in their bedrooms doing everything now when do you think, or I guess, what does the trend line look like of when that just kind of died?
I think there's still bands in the 90s. I think it really starts to falter in the 90s. The height of bands is really the 60s with the British invasion that bleeds into the 70s, to the point where I started thinking, like, was that just a weird aberration that bands were very popular? Because when you think of stars before the 60s, it's a lot of solo artists, Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby. They were usually playing with a big band. But still, I almost think that this era of bands was highly concentrated in the middle of the 20th century. I don't know exactly what led to that change. And bands are certainly popular through the end of the 1900s, but by the time you get to 2000, they're on the way out. This day and age, they almost seem like a relic. Again, I think part of it comes back to hip-hop. There were hip-hop groups, but hip hop seemed to be about, DJs and rappers and really solo artists, to the point where groups were not as big a part of the scene, even though there were, of course, legendary hip hop groups. At the same time, in this day and age, I think there is also an economic consideration there, whereas recorded music doesn't return as much money. A lot of it's there's more money seemingly to be made on the road. So if you're just selling a record, like, the economics might not make sense to put a whole group together. And to your point, you could record in your bedroom. I could sit here with a bass and a guitar and a couple drum loops, and I could have a song. So it's probably a confluence. As with all of this stuff, it's a confluence of a bunch of factors. But that is a great observation. There are more solo artists these days than there were 30 years ago.
Yeah. The one of the other things that I was thinking about, just kind of imagining what it would be like to listen to kind of the history of the pop charts, as you did. Are there in your own lifetime? Obviously there's going to be ones from the 40s, 50s, 60s, back then or whatnot. But from your own lifetime, are there songs that hit number one that you're just like, I don't remember this existing at all?
Yes, I was born in 95, so I feel like I'm sort of or more musically cognizant by the early 2000s. And I was just talking to someone the other day about the Thong Song by Cisco, which was not a number one hit. It peaked at number 2, I think. But Cisco had a number one hit called Incomplete. And when I remember listening to it, when I saw Cisco had a number one, I was like, oh, it's got to be the Thong Song. Was not the Thong Song, and I was like, I have no idea what this song is. There were a couple others from that era. Stutter by Joe.
I remember that one, yeah.
Featuring Mystical, I think. Yeah, they're just like a couple random early 2000 songs where I don't remember as much. By the 2010s, when I was in high school and college, I'm pretty much have a strong grasp on those. But even more recently, there were a couple number ones that were by solo members of BTS, the K-pop band. And it's sort of like, obviously they're very popular, but to me it partially exists in its own world, where they have this very intense fandom that can drive songs to the top of the charts, but sometimes the songs don't make like a wider impact. And I would listen to those and I'd be like, I've never heard this before, but it topped the charts.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that fandom, one of the other things that you've written about recently on your Substack is the take that poptimism isn't the problem, but online fandoms are. I guess I'm trying to think of how to say this without coming across as a super old guy and without getting flamed on the internet for making this comment. Whoa. Who are the fandoms that you think contribute to the issue? Obviously the Swifties. All right, we'll just get that out of the way.
Yeah, the large part of my point is there's this rockism, poptimism debate in the 2000s, but by the 2000s, people were like, well, just because something's popular doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. And I think that's a good corrective to have. I think we have definitely gone too far where now sometimes people are arguing that because something is popular, it is good, which if you're a Gen Xer, I feel like that would never have crossed your mind.
You are correct.
But yeah, I always see it on Twitter. It's mostly the artists whose fandoms would probably come to mind. Taylor Swift fans, Beyonce fans, BTS fans. It's all over the place, though. I work in music streaming on our first platform called Audio Mac, and it's very popular in Africa. And there are, same thing, I mean, there are intense fandoms out there that proliferate on Twitter and other parts of the internet. And I just always see this very bizarre thing where I see people arguing about which artist is better or what song is better, and then ultimately one of these people is just like, well, this one sold more, so it's better. And I'm like, what? That was never. I've been in many music debates in my life, Biggie versus Tupac, Beatles versus Stones, blah blah blah. I had never once heard someone bring up record sales in those debates, whereas now online that seems pretty common. So, yeah, I think that's bad for discourse when then it's more of just like an exercise in economics. It doesn't really have anything to do with what's the music actually is.
Well, you know what I think part of the problem is, and I was just talking about this with a bunch of people at a kind of Philly music conference the other day, is I don't know that, I think we made a mistake kind of letting specifically Spotify, but I don't want to, whenever I say Spotify, I don't want to let everybody else off the hook. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of like YouTube's in this, Apple, everybody's in this, but like that we let the idea of a stream be kind of the merit of worth, like festivals are booked off of how many streams you have, how many followers you have, stuff like that. Instead of just kind of like the culture itself, we've kind of, and that isn't to pretend that pop music hasn't always been about, financial success. Like I'm not trying to act, brand new, like this is a new thing, but I don't know what the fix is, other than if Spotify tomorrow were like, we're just not going to show you how much something streams.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a complicated question because there are some artists who like literally build fandoms brick by brick, and decades ago maybe they wouldn't have gotten a chance if some festival booker couldn't see like, oh, you have a lot of fans online. I agree with you that there is a problematic nature to only booking things that have gotten a ton of streams or have a ton of followers, because there are a lot of great artists who just need someone to take a chance on them and aren't as good as playing the social media game as others. I do really think that the world would be a better place, not just the music world, if all streaming sites, video sites, social media platforms did not show interaction counts.
Yeah.
I think it creates tremendous bias. I mean, maybe Spotify still has a list of these are the most popular songs. I don't think there's necessarily something wrong with that. But I think you would have a more open mind to listening to things if the music just had to stand on its own rather than being like, wow, this song by The Weeknd has 5 billion streams. I have to listen to this one.
Yeah.
It's self-perpetuating. Sort of like the joke how eventually the only marketing for Thriller was that it was the greatest selling album of all time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you said, it's the same thing with like the movie industry and stuff. Like I feel like one of the negative kind of things that came out of the internet is we've kind of made everything fantasy football, where we need to, we're all like, well, what did it do at the box office? It's like, what do you care? You're not making that money. Like, you know what I mean? Like, whenever, the majority of critical pieces about Marvel, a Marvel movie comes out and it's like, well, Marvel fell off, and it's like, okay, how's the movie? Like, do you know what I mean? And I find music to be the same thing, which I feel like that the tides are kind of changing a bit, because I was actually really interested in the discourse around Life of a Showgirl, because the usual kind of it did these numbers didn't stand. And it didn't stand even within her own fandom, because like even her own fandom was kind of split down the center of, but is this good? Do we like this? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like, I feel like that's healthy. I like seeing that, you know?
Totally. I mean, if we're like, we have to hold billionaires to task for what they do, is like Taylor Swift and all other superstars. It's the same deal. I mean, you don't want to just take what someone produces or a business someone runs for whatever they say. It's just it's a bad way to organize your society. It's probably bad personally for you too. I mean, you don't want to have a cultish following of some musical artists. And I say that as someone who's very devoted to a lot of music, but you want to be able to say this artist that I like made something bad. I don't think that's crazy. And I agree with you. I know the record still sold a gazillion copies, but I felt like this was the first time that I have seen a more muted reaction to one of her albums. And there were still some glowing reviews. The one in Rolling Stone comes to mind, which I personally thought was kind of ridiculous.
A little bit, yeah.
But yeah, it seemed like people seemed a little bit fairer about just taking that music for what it is, rather than constructing all these narratives about who Taylor Swift is and what this says about her and her relationships.
Yeah. So I am kind of chuckling in my head because we were both just like, take away all of the kind of engagement stats and stuff like that two guys who are as into data as we are like, can you just please take the data away? Like, but there's a fun irony there.
No, I definitely.
One of the questions I wanted to ask, though, about kind of the charts, which was, are there any songs you are now obsessed with that you didn't know existed before the project started?
Oh, totally. I mean, the one genre in general that I came to have a lot more respect for was disco. I had a very particular vision of disco as just like this ultra produced genre of music. And I've said this in other interviews, there are disco songs that are exactly like that, like the cheesiest possible music that you could ever hear. But it's a very, very rich genre. And like when it's done well, it's unbelievable. And I felt like I learned that with most genres. I've learned to have a more open mind where you probably don't dislike every song in a genre, except in maybe small cases. It's, genres of music are big worlds, and there's probably something in there for you. The one song I bring up constantly is a song from the early 70s called Want Ads by a group called Honeycomb. And it's sort of in like a Motown-ish style. It's very soulful. It's a little bit funky. Not only had I never heard this song, it has left zero cultural imprint, and it's awesome. It just absolutely rips. And anytime someone's like, oh, what was the most underrated song? I'm like, you need to go listen to Want Ads by Honeycomb.
I dig it. I can't wait to check that out after this. I've never heard it in my life. At least I don't think so. We'll see.
Yeah. But there are, especially in the earlier decades, late 50s, early 60s, there were certainly number one hits that I had never heard of. A group in the late 50s called the Fleetwoods. Mm-hmm. They were actually the first group to top the charts twice. I actually came to really like a lot of their music, but their first number one is a song called Come Softly to Me. Really beautiful song. So yeah, every decade there was usually one song I came across that I wasn't familiar with.
Is there a decade that you can now have definitively say, I think this was the best decade?
I hate to give the people that were alive and making music in the early 60s even more credit, but the mid 60s is quite spectacular. Because it's the Beatles, it's the Rolling Stones, it's the Beach Boys, but also Motown is putting out a ton of great music. It's just like a lot of great stuff at once. I don't know if I would even pick a decade. If I have to pick a decade, I guess the 60s, but I feel like there was a period from like 65 to 75, which was quite good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad stuff too, but the highs are very, very high then.
The other thing is from that time period, I feel like variety of what you would find. And I don't know if the data speaks to that, but like it just seems like there were so many different kind of genres that kind of were kind of living together on the charts at the same time, and like not just straight up songs, but sometimes instrumentals, and sometimes like the instrumental's dead, right? Like when was the last time an instrumental charted?
Well, if you're a little bit generous with the use of some words, then the Harlem Shake is an instrumental,
I'll
other
take
than
that.
saying the Harlem Shake. But before that, it was mid 80s, the theme from Miami Vice. And then I think before that was the Chariots of Fire theme. And then there's a couple disco instrumentals. But yeah, you're totally, I mean, by 75, 77, the instrumental's largely dead in popular music. But I agree with you in some regard that 60s period it felt like a crossroads of sorts, because jazz was sort of becoming less popular. You sort of have folk music becoming more popular in the US. The British invasion, you do still have the remnants of that instrumental, like surf rock music that was popular at the beginning of the decade. I mean, it's certainly an exciting time in popular music. I think there's good variety in most periods. There's a lot of people out there making music. But I agree, and like I am infatuated with a lot of the different scenes that were popping off at that time in the 60s.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and like, I do also like, I don't want it to sound like I'm kind of denigrating what we currently have or whatnot, because a lot of that stuff, like, became culture. Like it like there's elements of all of that stuff in what we still do today. So like, it's not like it truly ever went away, but like one of the things I always laugh about is like when people are like, where are all the rock bands? Where are all the da 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 da? And I'm like, in like 65, people were like, where are all the big bands? Where are all the, you know what I mean? Like this is just something like music evolves. Like, I don't know.
That's something I've actually changed my opinion on. I feel like over the years, is it's actually okay. It's sort of good when a genre dies that was popular for a long time and a new thing comes along. Like we would not want to live in a world where jazz was still the most popular genre in America. Not because I have anything against jazz, but you don't want like a hegemonic force like that. To me, that means culture is dead if things are not changing. And I love rock music, so I do wish there were more rock bands. But they're still, I mean, you said you live around Philly. I mean, there's always little clubs with rock shows going on. It's the same in New York City. I mean, if you're willing to go look for it, it's probably there, even if it's not what's on the radio.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what it is like people are always like, why are there no rock bands anymore? It's like, there are. You're just not going to look for them. Like, they're just not being served to you. And that's the challenge. Do you think doesn't it feel like there's we should be kind of making a change in sounds, like from studying, because like I feel like since 2015, like you can play a song from 2015 right now and it could probably chart because it sounds exactly like similar, like, stylistically. Aren't we due?
I think we are due. This is I feel like everyone who writes on the internet has their take on cultural stagnation, or however you want to refer to it. And I definitely do get that. Part of me thinks like, are we overstating the case a little, just because I like to play devil's advocate a little bit? Like if we went and looked at the year-end top 100 a decade ago and listened to them, would those songs all still sound like they could be popular today? I honestly don't know offhand. I totally hear what you're saying, though. I mean, a lot of the things that were popular a decade ago, and even a lot of the stars, Drake, Taylor Swift, these people are still around and they're still very popular. Beyonce. So there is... I just feel like I can never commit in this debate because I always go back and forth, but there is totally a case that music has not changed as much as it should have in the last decade. And I mean, I'd be down for another revolution, but
Yeah.
Where's it going to come from? What's it going to sound like? I don't know exactly.
My standing theory on it, and again, I don't like to just crush Spotify on this, but just culture in general. It's not just them. So like I always I started to have to precursor this because I feel like it sounds like I'm just this giant Spotify hater, and this podcast is hosted on Spotify, so I don't want that to come across that way. But I think part of the issue is kind of the way algorithms are. If you like this, you will like this. So like you want to make something that sounds like something that is, that will get you recommended. So like we've kind of devalued being different, because if you're different, then you have to work harder to kind of stand out in a recommendation kind of swamp.
I wrote about this a little bit, and some other people have pointed out, one of the most popular songs in the history of Spotify is this song called The Night We Met by this group Lord Huron, who is like a cool rock band. But if you look on other platforms, that song is not as popular, and it just seems like the Spotify algorithm has a particular affinity for this song for whatever reason. And I think it's a good example of how, I part of my job is I like work on personalization algorithms, and if there's ways for these things to go haywire if they're not actively managed, and there are choices we can make in how they are designed. Like for a long time at AudioMac, our personalized song recommendations would only serve you music you'd never heard before, whereas you could ratchet that in the complete other direction. I can just tell it to serve you music not only that we know you've heard, but that we know you love. So there are ways to hopefully make these things better for music, better for listening, make people more adventurous. But it is an active decision from who's ever designing these systems, which I think we forget. It's just people are like, oh, the algorithm. It's like, well, someone decided.
Right.
It's not, no one's back there turning the crank, but someone is deciding like, how do we want to recommend things? What do we want to optimize this towards? There are better ways you can do things, and I totally hear that criticism. And I do appreciate you not just ragging on Spotify, because I know that they're the biggest, so there's a reason people latch onto them. But most other platforms function pretty much the same, under the same economics and in the same way. So it's good to talk about it more generally.
Yeah, it's one of the things I talked about this a few years ago, but like it always comes back up that like I don't think and I read the thing you said about, or wrote about algorithm, kind of the algorithm argument the other day or week, or I don't know, time's a flat circle to me, but you know what, like to me the algorithm is just kind of the digital embodiment of karma, because like the problem isn't the algorithm, it's how we engage with it, because it's just it can't do anything but react to us. So like, if it, much like karma, you put good into the world, good exists. You put bad into the world, bad exists. And I think you engage with these certain things, like, of course it's going to kind of gravitate and feed you that. Like, that's not the problem of kind of the programming. That's the problem of human nature. Like,
yeah. And that's what I always say to people is, when people are like, oh, everyone listens passively to music these days. Like, what do you think pop radio was for the last 70 years? There's a lot of people listen to music passively, which, do I wish more listening was very active and you're reading the liner notes? Sure, but I think it's a pipe dream to pretend that that's always how people were listening. And I say that despite there being definite problems with how streaming functions in certain regards. But yeah, you are in some sense dealing with the fact that we're humans.
Yeah, for sure.
Can't get around that.
You want to go through this questionnaire? This is how I put everyone through this. It's called the Jauntlet. It starts with the one-hit wonders, and these are. I feel like you're the most learned person to be able to put some of these people against, because you've listened to the history of music. So I feel like your answers may hold more weight than most.
Oh man, I don't know. I'll tell you what I think.
It's all preference. There's no wrong answers. First one: Billy Joel or Elton John? Who do you prefer?
Do I give an explanation here, or are we just rapid firing?
It's up to you. If you got something you want to say about it, you can go right in on it, or if you just want to give an answer.
Like them both. Billy Joel, I feel like my dad was a bigger Billy Joel fan, so I'm just more, the music's more ingrained. And there was just a great documentary about Billy Joel, which, you know, it reminded me how great a lot of his music is. He does have a bad Billy Joel song is very bad though, but at the best, I think I think the average Elton John song might be better than the average Billy Joel song, but I think the peak Billy Joel song trumps Elton.
Good answer. Good answer. I like that. Debbie Harry or Joan Jett?
Again, I like them both. Debbie Harry, I think Blondie had a bit more range. You know, they sort of worked across a couple different genres, which I always thought was cool.
Very cool. Aretha Franklin or Tina Turner?
For me, this was, I feel like it's hard not to choose Aretha Franklin. She is the voice, I feel like, for a lot of people, and for good reason.
Definitely. Nirvana or Pearl Jam?
I went with Nirvana here. Oddly, grunge is something that I've never totally gotten. I mean, I know the big songs, and I like a lot of Nirvana songs, but I feel like for some people, this would be a very difficult question. And for me, I don't feel terribly strongly in either direction, but I like Nirvana more.
You know what I think the thing about grunge was, that a few people have spoken to this and whatnot, but like it was the perfect kind of age crossover where like old rockers were like, oh, I can get down with this. And, you know, young people were like, this is our music. It speaks to us. And like that kind of crossover kind of led everybody to the CD store, you know?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
That is cool. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah. Janis Joplin or Stevie Nicks?
I got to go with Stevie Nicks here, just longer career. Maybe if Janis, if she did not die as young as she did, maybe there would be more to her discography, but great voice, though. Great voice.
Side note: one of the things I wanted to ask about studying all of the Billboard, was there anybody who did not show up in the number ones that shocked you?
Yes, there are. This is sort of a fun fact. There are 3 artists who wrote a number 1 hit, but only ever got as high as number 2 themselves, and the 3 people are Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan, and Randy Newman. They all wrote number 1 hits, but performing themselves, they never got past number 2.
Wow.
I feel like that shocks people. Also, Creedence Clearwater Revival has the record for the most number 2 hits without getting to number 1. They had like 7 songs peak at number 2.
Wow.
So I feel like those usually surprise people.
Yeah. Well, you know, it surprised me. I only found this out like a few years ago, and I lived through that time period. So it kind of really, really confused me because I know how ubiquitous it was that You Can't Touch This was never a number 1.
Yeah, that is weird.
Right? Like that is like, and that's a song that everybody knows. It blows my mind. But Ice Ice Baby was. So, you know, there's no justice in the world.
The one thing to keep in mind is that like the rules for how they calculate the charts also change over time. So it's an imperfect measurement. You know, they're trying the best that they can.
Yeah. It just changed again too, didn't it? Like they just, the duration of time that something can spend on the charts has just recently changed.
Yeah, they did just change it because things were just like staying in the charts for literally years, and the industry wants the chart to look fresh.
Yeah.
So they're always making decisions like that.
Yeah. It's interesting. The big cliche, Beatles or the Stones?
2 of my favorite bands, more of a Beatles guy if I have to choose.
Okay. Yeah.
But you can't go wrong with that one in either direction.
For sure. Last one of the one-hit wonders, Bohemian Rhapsody or Stairway to Heaven?
For 2 really famous songs that I probably never have to hear again, even though I love them both, I think Stairway.
Okay.
I listened to both of these before the show, and I was like, maybe I just hadn't heard Stairway to Heaven in a while. I was like, oh yeah, this is totally worth the hype. Yeah,
it's good. I talked to Kevin Hansen, who was in a band called Huffamoose in the 90s. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not, but he was the prosecution's expert witness in the Stairway to Heaven lawsuit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I had no idea about this. And when I got to this question, he was like, "I never want to hear Stairway to Heaven again because like I had to completely dismantle that song and explain it." He's like, and then on the stand, I had to play Stairway to Heaven in front of Robert Plant and Jimmy Page, and I was like, "Oh,
That's
Jesus."
crazy.
Yeah, isn't that wild? Yeah. That was like one of the weirder, like, I wish I would have known that early on because that I would have made the entire interview about that court case. Like,
That's cool.
the second half of this is the top 10 countdown. In this, we use Jawn to be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be music. It can be anything. First one is, what was your first Jawn? What was the first thing you were obsessed with as a kid?
Okay, I was taking most of these as music. The first thing I was obsessed with, I was thinking of songs. I was obsessed with the song TNT by AC/DC because it was in, I think, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2.
Okay.
Which introduced me to like a lot of cool punk and rock music, and that was my AC/DC became my first favorite band because of that.
That's awesome. I love that. Number 2, what's your current Jawn? What are you into right now?
I just finished watching the television show The Pit, which I thought was exquisite. It's about a hospital in Pittsburgh. Yeah, I was pretty hooked on that for a while. I'm looking forward to season 2.
I've been hearing a lot of really good things about it. I feel like I should check it out. Number 3, what was your first concert, first live show you saw?
The Who.
Wow.
Or what was left of The Who at the time. I think it was, Daltrey, Townsend, Zach Starkey, and maybe Pete Townsend's son on bass or something.
Oh, wow. I saw, we had tickets to see The Who, and then they canceled or postponed the show because John Entwistle passed away. And when they rescheduled it, we went to see it, and Pino Palladino was playing bass, which was awesome. I'm a big Pino fan. But as Pete went around introducing everybody in the band, he introduced Zach, and then he gets to Pino and he goes, and replacing another Who corpse, this is Pino Palladino. And I was like, Jesus Christ. Which was the craziest stage banter until just last week. I heard possibly better. I saw Jeff Tweedy at Union Transfer, and he's playing in this band with his son Spencer and his other son, whose name escapes me, but he's got his 2 sons in the band. And right before playing this one song, he goes, I wrote this next song about my dead dad. And the audience went, and he stopped for a second and he turned and he goes, guys, remember Grandpa?
Oh my God.
It was the best. The absolute best. Number 4, what was the last concert you went to?
I saw Lord at MSG a couple weeks ago.
Wow. How was that?
I actually went in with low expectations because I would always see clips of her shows floating around online, and they seemed underwhelming, I guess would be the nice way to put it. But I had a great time. I thought she ended up putting on a really cool show, and she had a band, and the band was cool.
That's awesome. I dig that. Number 5, what's your favorite concert you ever been to?
I'll take a tiny bit of explanation. There's this band called St. Paul and the Broken Bones.
Yes.
It's like a soul band. I got free tickets in college to go see them at this bar. I knew like a couple of their songs, and I wasn't 21, it was 18 plus, but it was sold out. So I went by myself. I got myself a Coca-Cola while I was waiting for them to come on. And it was this little bar called, well, not little, probably held like 200 people, called Great Scott in Boston. And the room was just so small, and this band was clearly too big for this room. And it was absolutely electrifying. And then like 6 months later, they were opening for the Rolling Stones. So it was cool to see a band in like that small environment. And then a couple months later, like they'd sort of made it.
That's awesome. That is killer. Yeah, they're great. What's the sushi song that they just released? Have you heard this?
Yes, I can't think of its name though.
Yeah, it's a good one. I dig it. Number 6, who have you never seen live that you wish you could have? They can be living or dead.
2 guys that sort of died around the same time-ish, I think. Or no, I guess it was a couple. No, maybe. Prince and Tom Petty, who I guess I theoretically could have seen both of them. I was old enough. And I feel like especially Tom Petty, like my dad's a big Tom Petty fan. He was always sort of in the area. I'm sure you're familiar with the PNC Arts Center.
Yeah.
Holmdel. I feel like he always was sort of playing there. And my dad never saw him either. So big regret there. And Prince would have been awesome, but
Yeah.
too bad.
My here's my two. You just named two sad ones for me as well because Prince. My parents bought a ticket for me to go see him with them on the Purple Rain tour, and but then found out because I was a little kid at the time. Found out what the stage show was like, and then sold my ticket. But they went without me. And then Tom Petty. I went to see Tom Petty and the Black Crowes, and in the middle of the Black Crowes set, a friend of mine got in a fist fight with somebody in the lawn, and we left before Tom Petty came on because of that, because it just kind of ruined the whole time. Even though he wasn't at fault, like it just happened, and like the other guys got kicked out, and then we were just like, we should probably go, and we left, and with the understanding, well, we'll just catch Tom Petty next time. And then there wasn't a next time.
That's horrible.
Yeah. So you named two that I have missed as well for reasons. Number 7, name an unappreciated Jawn, something you wish people paid more attention to.
And this could be anything?
Anything.
So I was going to say Want Ads by Honeycomb again, but we already talked about it. So I'll go completely different direction. There's a podcast. It is popular. It's called Heavyweight. I think this should be like preserved in the National Archives. Basically, people just come to this guy, Jonathan Goldstein, and they're looking for someone or something, trying to track down a person they sat next to at a restaurant once 20 years ago that for some reason affected their life. And he's like he's just a podcast host, but he's very good at finding people, and it's a tremendous podcast.
That's awesome.
It'll make you laugh and make you cry.
That is cool. I got to check that out. Speaking of podcasts, I forgot to mention you were on my pals Charlie and Nate, the Switched on Pop.
Oh yeah, you're friends with them?
Well, no, not really. But Charlie, I'm in a Discord with Charlie. That's about it. That's.
Oh, okay.
I consider him a friend. I don't know if he considers me a friend, but
yeah, they're. It's one of the best music podcasts around. Like same. It always comes back to this Key Change article. They invited me on a couple of years ago when that was going. When there was a big discourse around key changes. And then, I was able to come on for another episode a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
They're great guys.
Very cool. Very cool. The next one, number 8, I know this is a kind of hack question, but what's your favorite album?
I usually say Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. I'm a huge Springsteen fan. It's still, when I put it on, the album still sounds as fresh as ever. So it's probably going to continue to be the answer that I give to that.
One of the comments I saw in one of the things you wrote was about what you think is the cruelest line or whatever in pop music history of if you want to make if you want to be happy for the rest of your life, never make a pretty woman your life.
Oh yeah.
I think a good contender is she ain't a beauty, but hey, or you ain't a beauty, but hey, you're all right.
Which I won't lie, Thunder Road is like I usually say that's my favorite song too, and I remember. I don't know. We learned it on guitar with my guitar teacher, and he was like, "Never say that line to a woman."
Yeah, yeah. It's I will say though, like I've come full circle because like I liked Bruce when I was younger. Then like it was like cool to not like Bruce, and now I'm like back in, and like I can like just reading his lyric sheets is just like reading poetry. Like I think Thunder Road lyrically is like one of the most amazing kind of vivid stories that like has been committed to song. And
it's crazy.
It blows my mind every single time. Like, and I forget where it was. Maybe it was like the World Cafe did an interview with him or something like that. And they asked him to just kind of read the intro to it, and just I just hear it in his voice now, and it's just like just reading it, it's just amazing, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
it's wild. But she ain't a beauty, you ain't a beauty, but hey, you're all right. That's all right to me. Like, yeah, no, come on. So awesome. Number 9, name an artist whose output you'll consume anything they release.
Also in the New Jersey vein, Jack Antonoff, he was originally became famous in the band Fun, which had that huge song We Are Young. And then over the years, he started a band called Bleachers that I really like, but he's just become a super producer where he's worked on a lot of Taylor Swift stuff, Lana Del Rey, Lorde. He gets around. I mean, this guy's, he's a busy man. So I'll usually check out a couple songs from whatever project he's producing just because I I think he's an interesting guy, and he's made a lot of albums that I really like.
Yeah. I had Andrew Dost from Fun on this podcast.
Oh, really?
And I got to ask him, and I know he took it the way I meant it, but afterwards I was like, kind of sounded like a dick when you said it, but whatever. I got to ask him what it's like to write a song as ubiquitous and as like otherworldly as We Are Young, to like enter the zeitgeist and then ever try to write another song again. Because like, can you just normally write a song was kind of my question, or are you always kind of chasing, well, I know I have this in me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's tough.
No, it's a great question.
But yeah, he was like, he kind of was like, yeah, it did affect us for a while, but you know, that was a long time ago, essentially. Like, you know, you got to move past it or die, I guess. But yeah, it's wild. He was a very, very good guy. Very good guy. The 10th and final question of the top 10 countdown. What is your favorite Jawn of all time? Again, can be anything you want it to be.
I was gonna say Thunder Road, because I thought we were just talking favorite songs, and I did feel stupid saying Born to Run and then Thunder Road, back-to-back answers. But I am a huge Springsteen fan. Here, I'll give you something else. I am kind of infatuated with the book Moby Dick.
Really?
Which is, you know, the huge 1,000-page book about a guy trying to chase down a whale. I've read it twice. It's nothing like you would expect it to be. It's just a bizarre, beautiful, crazy book that I know I'll never convince anyone to read a 1,000-page book that, you know, even high school English teachers don't want to teach, but I'll still try.
That's awesome. I love it. Great answer. So the book comes out November 13th, full title, Uncharted Territory, What Numbers Tell Us About the Biggest Hit Songs and Ourselves. What did this project tell you about yourself?
That music is... I wrote this over so many years, and like in the middle of this, the pandemic happened, and I remember listening to a ton of disco dance, 70s dance music, like during the height of the pandemic, where like people weren't traveling as much. And I was like, man, you're supposed to listen to these songs with other people, and music. It just was a reminder that music is a social art form in a way that a lot of other art forms are not. And I feel like that's the probably top thing I kept coming back to, is that music is a communal thing. It's something we share together, it's something we sing together, it's something we talk about together. And as much as fancy headphones and digital streaming make us think that it's something we do by ourselves, it's very important to share it with other people.
Ah, it's beautiful. I love that. And then you're having a release party on the 14th at the Mile Square Theater in Hoboken. Is that right?
Yes, I am. Yeah, we still got some tickets to that. It should be fun. I'll be doing a little talking, and then I'm going to be having a conversation about the book with my friend Walt Hickey, who he wrote a different book called You Are What You Watch, which is about like which is about television, movies, and data. So it's sort of a sister book to this. And it should be a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And what's the website address for the Substack?
Can'tgetmuchhigher.com. I should have picked a title that was a little shorter, but yeah, Can't Get Much Higher. If you search my name, Chris Dalla Riva, it'll come up. I'm all over the internet, for better or worse.
As someone who has to type out the words "Yo, that's my Jawn" continuously, I feel you. You know, we didn't really talk about it, but also you released an EP this year, right? The back in May, or did it just go up in May?
Yeah, I guess it's supposed to be. I usually put out a couple songs every year. I am in the midst of trying to put out my first like full length album. I usually would put out EPs just because it's easier to finish an EP. And then the book got in the way. So hopefully I'll finish the album next year. So far, I believe I have three or four songs out from it. So that was the last release. I packaged all the singles
okay.
that I
You
put
waterfall
together.
Very nice.
Yes, the classic waterfall.
The waterfall.
But you could view it as an EP. Yeah, I'm excited about it. I work with a great guy named Max Rausch in West Orange, New Jersey. He has a cool studio called Domestic Bliss. And yeah, hopefully after the new year we finish the project.
It's exciting. I can't wait to hear it. I can't wait to read more, and I can't wait to read this book. Chris, it is absolutely fantastic that we got to chat. I want to thank you so much for coming through here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a ton of fun.
My many thanks again to Chris for joining me on the show today. Uncharted Territory, What Numbers Tell Us About the Biggest Hit Songs and Ourselves is out this Tuesday, November 13th, wherever you find books. If you are in or around North Jersey, Chris will be having a book release event on this Saturday, November 15th at Mile Square Theater in Hoboken, New Jersey. And of course, you can read Chris's newsletter, Can't Get Much Higher, regularly on his Substack by visiting can'tgetmuchhigher.com. Links to all of those are, of course, as always, in the show notes. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast wherever you get your podcast from. And gang, it is never too late to get yourself a super awesome Jawn Scout Merit Badge for citizenship of the world just by rating and reviewing us. Don't forget to visit www.yothat'smyjawn.com for the link tree with links to articles, merchandise, all of the previous episodes of this podcast, guest appearances on other podcasts, and more. And while you are there, please be sure to sign up for our mailing list to get all of the updates delivered straight into your inbox. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/YoThat'sMyJawn for updates and live streams. Follow us on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack at Yo That's My Jawn, and search Yo That's My Jawn on YouTube to find the Yo That's My Jawn YouTube channel. Like and subscribe the heck out of that ish. We want to hear from you. Reach out and touch some Jawn. Fun times. I had them. I hope you did too. Blue skies. Until next time, everybody.
That's my Jawn! Displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. You taste it, things that don't need to be measured.
Yo, That's My Jawn is a Lonely Monk production. Written and produced by yours truly, Nate Runkle. Theme song by me, under the moniker Nate 3.0. Special thanks to Fox Run Brands, DX Ferris, Andrew Scott, Maggie Poulos, Dan Drago, Natalie Runkle, and the beautifully vibrant and wickedly stunning Katie Daubney. If you or anyone you know has any ideas they would like to share or any guests they would like to hear on the podcast, please feel free to reach out to us at yothat'smyjawn@gmail.com or hit us up on the socials at yothat'smyjawn. Until next time, be sure to displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. Tilt your head back and shout to the world, Yo, that's my Jawn.